Do you wonder why your maps get denied? Do you aspire to create better maps? Well, you have come to the right place. My tutorial will teach you everything that is necessary to become a master map maker. I will go through several key principles to great map design, and I will break the process into simple steps so that by the end of this video, you too can make excellent maps. In this video, I'll explain the do's and don'ts with maps, so what not to do and what you should do with your maps. I will explain the game's maps guidelines so that you can avoid getting your map denied like this, or this, or this. I will also explain how to spot map mistakes by redesigning a poorly designed map. And finally, I'll show you the Sculptor method that I use when making my maps so you can make finished maps from scratch. I have also included timestamps in this video so that you can go directly to a section for convenience. So then, let's get started. Starting with guidelines, Blocktanks have very clear guidelines for map making. Let me go through all the guidelines quickly. Maps must emphasize gameplay. They cannot simply be art. So, unfortunately for you artists out there, we cannot create pixel art, as maps, no matter how cool they may seem, will get denied. Next, all spawn points should have access to each other. Unless you are making a dodgeball map, which is separated by a fence wall, all other game modes require that spawn points connect to each other in any shape or form. We don't want players to spawn and be trapped in a cage forever. Next, no diagonal walls. Well, what are diagonal walls? If you see these type of walls in your map, know that your map will get denied by moderation. It is because these types of walls cause glitches with the game's hitboxes, so that funky things can happen. Luckily, the fix is very simple. We just have to make these walls thicker so that we don't create this diagonal wall fashion. And finally, low effort submissions. This often gets confused with poorly designed maps, but the two are very different from each other. Low effort relates to how much effort it took to create that map. Low effort maps don't consider the following: maps that look like they were made in 1 to 2 minutes, maps that are too empty, or maps with very few walls. If any of your maps look like this, you should redesign it quickly. What is poorly designed? A lot of low effort maps overlaps with poorly designed maps. Poor design relates to the usage of the blocks in your maps. Poor design have these characteristics: empty space or the lack of walls, too much ice or the ice in your map serves no purpose, too many fences or the fences in your map serve no purpose, too much roofs or your map is only roofs, diagonal walls, or it's art. These maps are all poorly designed. Do's and don'ts. Don't use ice everywhere. Gameplay with ice becomes chaotic and controlling the tank becomes difficult and annoying. Instead, we should be using ice for a function. For example, in the map Frozen Vale, it uses ice to create unpredictable but controllable movement for the players fighting in the middle. The amount of ice plays a huge role in how good a map will be, but too much is unacceptable. Don't use ice for no reason either. If your ice does not serve any function within the map, it should not be there. For example, in these maps, the ice exists but plays zero role in improving the gameplay. Empty space. Everyone knows the feeling of how boring empty space can feel. If you played on the map Colosseum, you will know that the center of the map feels very random, unless you are in a game with several players. The only way I could describe the empty space is poorly designed, but it still seems fun? How? I will get there later in the video. However, what we do not need is too much empty space, like in these maps. Don't put too many roofs. Now to demonstrate and get real practice. To learn to create good maps, we need to get experience. So let's apply what we learned into our new map. Let's play the time lapse. Is this a cool map? Well, I would not say so. This is a map that would be denied, so let us fix this map by applying what we know about map creating. First, let's remove those diagonal walls. Next, we can observe that the map has many paths that don't lead to anywhere. These are pointless to have, so ensure that each route goes somewhere, or else the players will have a very unfulfilling experience going this way. We should reconnect these to the rest of the map. We should also connect the isolated spawn points to the rest of the map, otherwise players will spawn inside and won't be able to leave. After that, we should deal with the amount of roofs in the bottom left. We don't need to have an entire area covered in roofs. Instead, let's spread the roofs around the map. In this way, we have used roofs more effectively and the player experience will be more enjoyable. Now, let us deal with the next problem. The fences in this corner. They have no purpose, so like the roofs, we should spread them around the map. A rule of thumb for fence placement is too many together is bad. It is almost always better to scatter them. Lastly, the ice in this map has no direction. The best way for ice to be placed on a map is to give it a direction and destination. The ice allows the player to move fast, so let's try to implement this. Unfortunately, I'm not experienced with using ice. I honestly prefer maps that don't have ice in them. The final error is that the weapon spawns are not evenly distributed across the map, so let us scatter them across the map so that each team has an equal share. That is how we can create a map. However, it's not perfect. This is not how I would go and make a map. I still feel like this map is disorganized and has a lot of flaws. We got rid of all the errors that would get the map denied, but this map does not emphasize gameplay yet. So, how do we emphasize gameplay in a map? This leads us to our final part about the Sculptor Method. So, what is the Sculptor Method? To demonstrate the basic idea of the Sculptor Method, we should always begin with using basic shapes like a square. Sculpt a square by adding blocks and breaking the shape into more interesting and complicated structures. This same idea is used in traditional art methods. Artists often start with basic shapes when creating detailed illustrations because these shapes provide a solid foundation for the artwork. Let's begin with a simple demonstration before we begin making a map. Let's start by drawing a square. Next, we can refine the shape by defining more basic squares. These squares help in visualizing the map. Now that we have the basic guidelines down, we can start deleting parts of the walls to create entrances and doors or maybe windows using fences. Now we can begin adding the smaller details into the walls by using fences and adding blocks so that the walls aren't completely straight. And that is the entire process. Simple, right? Starting with basic shapes guides us so we know what the map looks like before committing to finer details. Now let's employ the Sculptor Method to a final map. I will guide you through my process. To start with, I give the map an odd amount of dimensions, so like 37 blocks high or 23 blocks wide. Next, I'll use the grid tool so I can find the center. Now I'll begin drawing the shapes, defining the sections of the map. These sections usually are the center, the spawn points, and the areas that lead towards the middle. I usually make this really quickly by drawing lines around the map that divide these sections clearly. For a map to be well designed, we need to think about how we want to lead the player towards the action. In this map, the main action is the center, and I want to emphasize this by designing the map so that the players head towards it. A tip to help you plan your map is to locate where you want to place your spawns. This allows us to figure out the map paths we want to build to lead the players towards the center. I place my player spawns in the corner, so I think about using the sides of the map to direct them towards the middle. We can visualize if we are making good paths by drawing lines over our map and seeing if the paths lead towards the middle. I still keep the shapes as rough as possible before adding details because I don't want to waste time designing an area that might not be used in the final design. I also use this ice path that functions as a direction towards the middle, emphasizing the centralized gameplay in this map. This allows the players on the side of the map to instantly be put into action by swiftly going across the ice into the middle. We should also think about how it would feel as a player on this map. Is the map too tight and are the walls too close? We don't want to make the player feel claustrophobic. I begin using fences in the design so that players can attack the middle from the sides. When designing the spawn points, we should also think of how easy it is to spawn camp. We all know how annoying it is to be trapped in a spawn only to be massacred. To avoid spawn camping, I try to reduce the time it takes the player to leave the spawn. I think this allows the spawn protection to be more useful and increases the risk for enemies trying to attack. Lastly, I started placing the roofs. On this map, I did not design areas with roofs in mind. If you do want to create maps with roofs, you have to think about how the players will use these roofs for their advantage. If your roofs serve little to no purpose, it is not a good idea to have them. And I add the final details with the weapon spawn locations. These should be placed equally across the map. The areas I like to put the weapon spawns are near the player spawns. Many weapons are put in the middle, and weapons that lead towards the middle. We can also add the game modes for this map by changing it in the top right and adding the objectives. Now we have finished a map and is ready to be published. I hope this tutorial helped you learn the intricacies that map making has and how you can improve your map making skills. Don't be afraid to ask any questions or on anything that confuses you in the comment section and I will answer them. Thanks to all the Blocktanks moderators for supporting this video with useful suggestions. Thank you all for watching.